Hello there, and welcome to today's SBC webinar. My name is Andrew McCarran. I'm the Managing Director of SBC, and I'm here to take you through this subject today. And what we are talking about is white labels and multi-jurisdictional KYC. With regards to this today, we're going to be focusing on Latin America and the exciting stuff that's happening down there with regulations, not regulations, upcoming regulations. There's a lot to talk about, that's for sure. Joining me on the panel today, we have Martin Litschke. He's the SVP for American Regulatory Affairs and Responsible Gambling at Entain. You will also know him as the host of SBC's Safe Bet Show podcast. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Andy. How are you? Thanks for having me. Hello, everybody.
No problem. And with us also, we have Roger Redfern-Tizet. Hopefully I got that right this time. Director of Global Gaming at ID Now. Roger, pleasure to have you with us.
Yeah, bom dia, hola, hello, and whatever language else you would like me to use. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. I'm going to stick to English because I can just about manage it. And also on audio only, because we've caught him in the middle of transit, is Felipe Fraga, Chief Operating Officer at Estrelabet. Felipe, how are you doing?
Hi, Andrew. Roger Martin it's a very big pleasure to be with you. And sorry because I'm only audio and I will leave soon because I'm in Panama, flying to Mexico in a few minutes. But it's a good opportunity to talk about KYC and Brazil with you guys.
Excellent. Yes, and as we've only got Felipe for so long, I'll start with you, Felipe. Do you want to just tell us a bit about Estrelabet and your experience in Brazil at the moment?
Of course, Celebet is like a child for me because we started this operation a few years ago after the Brazilian president Michel Temer in 2018 legalized sports betting was somehow illegal in Brazil, and 4 years ago it started to be legal again, and we started the company to explore this market because Brasilia is gambling people. We gamble since we are a child. At last we playing football, we gamble a Coca-Cola or something like this. And was a good opportunity to explore this market and to see the development of the market in Brazil, because people start again to see how who is to bet, even sports or gambling or casino, everything else. And now the challenge is to see how the regulation is going on and to hold the challenge of know the customers well, because everything is very new for us. Uh, a few months ago, a few years ago, everything was so artisanal, so manually, and now we learn that we need to have good companies with us. So that's what we are looking for now and waiting for the regulation.
I mean, speaking about the regulation, we've been promised it from September, then November, then December, then start of February, and with President Lula still waiting to sign this legislation. How far are we away from it? Are we still imminent?
Yeah, someone saying Brazil is eminent to have a regulation 30 years ago. So I believe since I was born, Brazil is heading to have a regulation. But now, especially because last month we heard about some match fixing um, things, and the public ministry is having some trouble with them players of the Brazilian second division involved. And of course, as always, the gambling companies is the first one to for us to run the fingers, and we must to defend ourselves and say, "Come on, we are the victims." And the discussion about the regulation back in the field and got acceleration, especially because Brazil needs money, and without a regulation, we have no taxes directly directed to the correct areas involved about sports betting, especially. And we had already some meetings between the Ministry of Economics and some partners of the industry to discuss. At last, they are hearing us. And the last news we heard of them is that after the travel that Brazilian president is doing to China, we have at last the first bill signed about regulation, and it will be kind of a surprise. We don't know exactly how long will be the license and how much it will cost and how will be the details of KYC or nothing like this. We are just preparing for everything can come.
So yeah, hopefully Lula comes back from China in a good mood, and then we can finally move things on. So, I mean, you're in a kind of a strange situation where there isn't legislation, but there's legislation coming. I mean, how do you arrange your KYC in with regards to that?
Yeah, the first moment did it manually, as I said. When we have some trouble or some possible trouble, some possible fraud with some clients, we claim him to send for us his documents, the ID card. And in Brazil, the ID card is very different. We have no, it's ugly ID card. Probably next year it will be more modern, like European ID card. And we had to check it to read the name of the guy, to check with the government sites, and was not work so good, and especially we we kept on risk. Then we find ID now, and we are developing some system, especially for platform sporting tech, and we are looking forward to have this with all the technology ID now have to control more our customers, especially not for our safety, but especially for the customer safety and to protect against underage, against fraud, against money laundering. And I believe KYC, what labels legacy system like Adinal can support us and provide us the correct security to have an operation running well. And when some authority in Brazil can claim us to understand our customers and to protect ourselves, we will have it. And we had a situation last year. Then the policy call me, especially call me, and ask me about a customer that was facing some troubles with the policy, the feds, and we were able to send them information. But if we had at the time already I did not working, we will be better. So that the movement is not only Stilabet is doing. I believe another companies is doing as well, especially the companies from Europe that are born in Brazil. But the companies that start the operation in Brazil as well is moving in this way to have the QAC, and we have a market in Brazil completely safe in a few months. Especially because I really believe that the regulation will hold this stuff. We cannot have underage playing because uh, they try a lot. I saw a lot of moms names in in our customer control, and we know that sometimes it's the kids, and with the better control of KYC. And as I say, I love the now system, and I believe we have good things in the next month.
Well, that's a good time to segue to you then, Roger. I mean, how are you helping Australibet in Brazil? I mean, what's the ID now approach to what operators need at this moment, and once Lula finally signs that bill?
I mean, I just wanted to say, comment to obviously Felipe talking about taxes. I think Brazil is the only country where operators actually want to pay tax, and actively looking after it. But it's obviously good to see to give back. But yeah, I mean, coming back to your question, I think obviously, let's say like Felipe just started with the topic, is that obviously right now the ID cards and driving licenses in Brazil have very limited security features. So there is not actually that much that you can really do, apart from when you obviously have a really good system in place and also have a hybrid approach to it. So in terms of what we do for our customers, whether they want to do it fully automatically or if they want to have a, let's say, hybrid or dual approach where there might be a person obviously checking the decision of the actual system, it is actually very important that you stay obviously stable, that you essentially provide a software that really works for the operator. In terms of KYC, it always really differs, because in the end of the day, every company has their own definition of it. They have their own KPIs, and you really have to then provide them with a software that achieves them for them, and that is very flexible. We also achieve it by having access to the official government database, where we can essentially check the CPF number and make sure that the name is the same, that the person is actually still alive, of course, and to also check their age. So with that, we have many different factors how we can detect fraud, how we can protect also players, and also protect the operators in order to make sure that they have a viable business ongoing. Because let's be honest, in my opinion as well, I think Brazil has the potential to be actually the number one sports betting market in the world. Because if you look at the people, they're so passionate about sports, not only football, but also, an example, basketball. And, they're very fanatic. And like Philippe said, I mean, maybe betting against your friends is kind of in the culture almost, like, you play for, like a bottle of Coca-Cola, like we were talking before, or something else. It's just in the culture, and it's then obviously the responsibility of the operators, but also the suppliers, to make sure that this happens in a safe environment, and that people do it in a safe way, and also a very responsible way.
Okay. I mean, with regards to Entain, Martin, obviously they're a slightly different approach, a global operator compared to Estrela Bet. And Brazil is one of the regulating markets. I think was the phrase that the CEO said they're remaining in as stuff becomes legal. How much does your approach chime with what Estrela Bet are doing? Is it the same thing regardless of the size, and KYC stays at the same kind of quality level, or is there stuff you can also do internally as well as with somebody like ID Now?
Well, absolutely, yeah. Brazil is one of the regulating jurisdictions. There's a clear path to regulation, fingers crossed, in a very, very foreseeable future. Just like Felipe, I expect, might have to eat my words if he doesn't do it, but I do expect Lula to, at the very least, have a look at and ideally sign the initial regulatory package that will trigger sports betting licensing in Brazil once he's come back from his state visit to China, of all places. Perhaps he's going there to talk to them about sports betting as well. That could be another regulating jurisdiction. But I shall digress. To answer your question, it's like similarly, I'd like to think similarly to Estrela Bet, we of course have to bake in all the applicable, not only cultural, but also technological and administrative idiosyncrasies. So to Felipe's and Roger's point, unlike in some other jurisdictions, it's actually a great thing that for years and years Brazil has had the CPF, or if you will, CPF system in place, because that makes things much more straightforward. I believe there's a question asking us to explain what the CPF number is. So effectively, that's the Brazilian tax registration, but also, well, it's a number that serves as an ID. My wife happens to be Brazilian, so she's got her CPF, and my mother-in-law, who happens to be in the room next door, she's got her CPF. So to Roger's point, yeah, exactly. I'll get them on, and then Felipe and my mother-in-law can have a chat in Portuguese. But on a serious note, that is, I'd like to think, Roger, do correct me if I'm wrong, but a very straightforward way of matching the registration data with the data that's been provided for the purposes of a state database.
Yes,
So
100%. And then also, if you have, it's all about triangulation, right? So if you have, various data inputs, whether that's obviously the document, then in combination with the CPF, you have a very, very good system in place. And some other countries, they wish they had it, Germany, but we obviously move, and like you said, I think it's a wonderful system, and it happens to work as well, so which is obviously great.
yeah, perhaps one day, and even the UK will have ID cards. Labour will be back
Oh,
in power, and they might
yeah,
resurrect
let's
that.
not start that.
But talking about going back to Antane's approach for 10 more seconds, if I may, yes, we also, well, we happen to be a global company, so we'd like to think, without pretending for a split second, that we'd be omniscient and that we would have seen it all. No, we have not. But at the same time, on top of what we need to do locally, we'd like to think that we've got very, very strong foundations in place globally across the business that help us to verify our customers, of course, the lifeblood of the business, the customers and the data, duly protected, that allow us to verify them to the highest applicable standard as expediently as we can, of course, being supported by the likes of ID Now.
Excellent. I mean, while you're still with us, Felipe.
Yeah,
Oh, if you
yes,
if you got
yes.
something to add, go on.
I move next to my gate, and just to complete the information about CPF, I'm if you heard a call to Mexico City, I'm leaving. Well, about CPF number, that's another thing important to say, that it's about financial. In Brazil, the payment method is a fasted payment method that's called PIX, PIX. And PIX, you have a CPF key number. You can use your CPF as a key to receive money through PIX. So, for example, we choose in Stellabet to have everything more safe, to have the payments of withdrawal payments connected through the CPF number, because we pay directly to the customer account. So it's more important than email or phone number, because you can have five, six, seven, a million email accounts and a lot of phone numbers, but CPF you only have one. It's your ID number, national thing. You can have two CPF. You can have one CPF in each state. So we have in CPF the safety to have the customer having one single account and one single bank account to receive the money. It prevents money laundering. That's why CPF is so important in Brazil. If we can connect CPF to an email account and have like a KYC to email accounts or KYC to phone numbers, and everything is connected in a single way, will be safe for us to have as well. You can register with your email or with your phone number. But for now, CPF is the best way to have safety about the customer.
So, Felipe, I think you alluded to earlier that they're updating the system, making it more digital friendly. What does when somebody has their CPF number? Is it just something they have in their wallet as paper? Um,
It's on
or
the
did I
ID
misread
actually.
what you were saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
on the ID. And for example, now I believe since 4 or 5 years ago, at least when my child born 4 years ago, when I registered her, oh, I they she got already a CPF number, and his birth certificate has a CPF number already. And in my time, decades ago, I got my CPF only when I was 16. But now when the baby is born, I already have the CPF number. So it's every Brazilian have the CPF number. You can in the past we had a card, but now it's your ID card. Next year the ID card in Brazil will change, will be the same in all the country, and the ID number will be only CPF, because now we have the CPF and we have a state ID number. So you can have 27 ID numbers and one single CPF. So the
Okay.
ID number is useless. And now we have only CPF. In the next year, we have a card with a chip and more like the developed countries.
I suppose they want you paying tax as soon as you're born these days, which is why you're getting that CPF number as early as possible. But
Everything's about taxes.
I mean, with regards to CPF, I know in some jurisdictions and in some markets, people are a bit wary of sharing that number. Is there any kind of reticence from your players about using that as part of the ID process?
Can you repeat, please, Andrew?
Sorry, I was saying from the customer perspective, are they happy to, are they used to sharing that CPF number for identification purposes?
Yes, yes. It's the first question we ask him. You must digit your CPF number. Then we connect with the public system, the federal receipt, and the federal receipt provides us name and mother's name and birth date. So we have all this information because it's single for each person in Brazil. After that, we ask email, ask phone, just to make every communication easy in our side. So they are happy to say. In the beginning, they were not. They were afraid what we could do with the CPF. But now it's very common in Brazil to provide your CPF everything you need. If you need to open a bank account, if you need to open a bio account, or everything else you need to put your CPF, especially in sports betting.
Okay. Oh, interesting. There's a question come through again on the chat. Is there a governmental base that combines CPF with email and number, or is it just the mother's name and the birthday, and then you've got to add the email and the phone details?
No, so there is
Um,
an official government database that combines all those three. However, obviously suppliers, like an example ourselves, we obviously try to do that, right? So we can use essentially certain utility data. We can use the CPF data, and we can also look at documents and obviously combine them to provide extra security. Also together with the email risk assessment, an example. But at this moment in time, there is not a official government database that combines that utility data with the CPF.
And if I made your previous point about potential reluctance, if not reticence, just like Felipe, I don't see this coming because from personal experience, I'm the weirdo. I go and hang out with my family. We would go to the shopping mall. Every single time you go to pay, you'd be asked to provide the CPF number. So I'm the one that doesn't have it. And I go, how come you don't? Oh, you're a gringo. You don't have it. But for
Oh,
that,
Martin.
that leads me to believe that customers won't have any issues with that, even gambling customers, because they do it daily.
Yeah. And before I leave, because I believe they're already calling, do you believe that it happened in São Paulo, but it don't happen in Minas Gerais? In Minas, they don't ask you to put the CPF. Usually,
See,
only
I
the
need
big companies, but usually they don't ask it.
I need to spend more time in Minas, but I can picture why they might not be asking in Minas that often.
You love it, guys. Thank you very much, and sorry to leave soon. And wow, they're
Problem.
calling. You are in the good hands. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks for
Felipe.
joining us, Felipe. Bon voyage, and
Thank you.
yeah, let's going above and beyond in between this connection. So, so you were just talking about Minas there, Martin, because I believe they've just started a 120-day trial asking for the ID numbers for the lottery there. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Because as you might know, and as our audience might know, as a result of a decision of the Brazilian Supreme Court a couple of years ago, I believe 2, if not 3 by now, every single Brazilian state also happens to have a right to regulate sports betting, which is, don't ask me why, but it's considered a form of lottery in Brazil. So the Supreme Court recognized the right that all individual states, 26 plus the federal district, have to regulate all types of lotteries. So there's been a whole tapestry of regulatory approaches to it. There have been few tenders, including failed tenders, and indeed Minas is one of the states that have decided to go down this route. But that very long story short, with a view not to confusing anyone, as we've already said, the federal regulation will prevail over any state regulation, and we remain hopeful that will be upon us in a very foreseeable future.
I mean, staying with Brazil for a little while. I mean, this legislation, again, imminent as it has been for 30 years, as Felipe says. Does that touch upon the KYC process, or do we not know yet? And you're just going off good practice or existing laws that are there for the movement of money?
I mean, at this moment in time, we're just, we're using best practice because until there's something, 100% on the paper, we can't really rely on that. So, and then also considering, which are obviously, the other news that came where essentially, also, Brazilian senators are trying to propose a different kind of, sports betting law, which kind of, contradicts the presidential one. So, that will be also quite quite a good to watch, I guess. But I mean, from our perspective, what we're using is we are using best practice. We are presenting different use cases to our essentially prospects, and then also existing customers that are an example operating in Brazil or Peru, Chile, Colombia. We present them with the best practices, and they then essentially choose as to what is their risk appetite, what is their risk assessment, and they then decide which use case to go with. So end of the day, I mean, for us, it's always about providing different perspectives on a topic that's usually quite you have to do this and this and this, but then end of the day, at this moment in time, we're not 100% sure, but we can already provide solutions which I'm very sure of that will essentially fulfill the regulations that will come in place anyway.
So you're kind of aiming above, so anything that comes underneath will you'd already be at the very minimum matching these standards that come in.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, in the end of the day, we look at if you look at different regulations, whether that's of course MGA, whether that's the UKGC, whether that's Germany, whether that's Ontario, etc. So you have a look at them. You obviously propose those solutions to our customers, and then whatever the risk assessment is, they then choose the right option for them. Because end of the day, and I always say, we're only suppliers, right? We are the ones to make the lives easier of operators, and it's always in the end of the day their decision what they want to go with, and that's our task, to provide them something that's flexible, and that's also also functional for for a long time, because in the end of the day, you don't want to have a supplier that you can only work with in one country or for a specific amount of time, because that would just cost you too much money to implement the systems, to test them, to make sure they work. It wouldn't actually make sense. So of course, you need to have all of that in mind, really.
Excellent. And Martin, with sort of end-to-end approach to these sort of things, I mean, I've seen other operators plug in as many sort of KYC suppliers as they can just to make sure they're covered more than anything else from a regulatory perspective. Is that is that best practice for that kind of stuff?
Well, yes, at the same time, as we've already discussed, addressing this issue might be more difficult in certain jurisdictions than it is in others. So, at the risk of making it sound very cheesy, we'd always be on the lookout for the most efficient solution. So, if it turns out that that might require multitude of providers, then we'd go down that route. But at the same time, if there can be any cost efficiencies made by means of instructing a single supplier in a given jurisdiction, I'm sure that my KYC colleagues at the teams would look into it as well. But yes, the ultimate goal is to make sure that we can usher as many customers through the door as possible in an efficient and, to Roger's other point, safe and responsible manner.
One of the issues we were going to talk about, as well as KOC, is kind of white labels and how they've got a certain role to play in these emerging markets as people, should we say, dip the toe in to see if it's worthwhile. I mean, how closely do you work with the white labels that are working in those areas, Roger?
Um, of course, I mean, today it's I mean, I would almost compare those let's say white labels that work in the gambling space to those banking as a service platforms which you have all across Europe, which make it extremely easy for companies to innovate on existing platforms with licenses across pretty much every market. So of course, it brings a lot of good to the industry. It brings a lot of new ideas, and those white labels are there to also help to promote our industry, the gambling industry here, with a lot more businesses. So I mean, as you saw in the past. When I started in this industry, it was a little bit like the Wild West, where it was pretty much who has the biggest one wins. But nowadays it's more about reputation. It's more about demonstrating responsibility, demonstrating trust to players, but also obviously to regulators, and also in the end of the day to your investors. Because let's be honest, if you look at the size now of companies like Entain or also others like Bet365, etc., there's a hell of a lot of money now behind those companies, being invested. So you need a business that's obviously built on a safe foundation. And if you don't control obviously the players, which today are the heart of the business, and if you don't know who they are, and if you don't prevent certain things, then obviously it can be coming down on you like domino stones of the day. So it has to be built on a strong foundation. I think white labels do a lot of good there because they build those foundations with their platform, and obviously then businesses can invest, can innovate on those platforms, and go into just bring new ideas and competition, right? I mean, Entain wouldn't be there where they are right now without the competition, because then it's then you're just doing the same thing all over again, and it's just good for the whole industry.
Well, wouldn't it be great if we had a sports betting monopoly in Brazil or any other? No, I'm just kidding. Because as usual, Roger's absolutely spot on. We, just like all other companies, we welcome fair competition. Emphasis on well, actually both words, competition, but even more importantly, fair. And Brazil, just like other jurisdictions that have or will have regulated lately or will have regulated shortly, the first and the key issue to address is to make sure that regulation helps effectively and efficiently drive out the black market operators. And absolutely, that's where the likes of KYC companies, in whatever shape, way, or form they might be coming, are very, very helpful on top of us doing things reasonably, sustainably, and come in hand with sensible regulation. So can't agree more. That's always the place to start. Create a well-regulated, competitive market that has the ability to drive the black market out, and then we can be building upwards from there.
I mean, with regards to KYC, it's obviously it's very useful from a social responsibility perspective to make sure you know who people are playing and they're not playing on somebody else's account. Has there been any discussions around that around Brazil, or is that, like you say, the next stage um, uh, in how the laws will develop from a individual perspective?
Yeah, look, I mean, enough today you have various examples now where there is there is certain things being done in order to prevent impersonation. An example, like it is in Ontario, also in the Netherlands, and also in Germany, where you have to do essentially a selfie and then also a liveness check, meaning that you can't just hold up a portrait of someone or a picture of someone into the camera, which will then obviously match the picture on the document, but rather making sure that this person is actually, a live person, and they're not being kind of forced to do that. I mean, again, social engineering is another kind of thing where obviously with those automated let's say means of verification, it is rather hard to detect those. Like an example, if there's someone else in the room and making that person verify, obviously we would hope that this doesn't happen as many times, but it does happen. So there is different means for those things where you do an example, a face-to-face call, that we also do, especially in Germany, where that's the regulation for financial services. But in enough today, it's all about bringing it together and having different data sources kind of feed into your decision. And enough today, where it has to be scalable and where it has to be safe, you have to automate as much as possible, because again, let's be honest, operators don't want to have 300, 400 people literally going through transactions every minute to see if that's maybe fraudulent. And also for a human, it's very hard to detect those patterns. So you have to use machine learning technology. I'm always very skeptical about using the word AI in those in these systems right now, because it's purely machine learning what we're doing right now. I mean, again, ChatGPT may change quite a lot, which I would hope a lot of companies will innovate with the possibilities that there is. But overall, again, it's about finding the right data sources, finding the right systems in order to come a very good, educated decision if that player A is even allowed to play on your platform, B, how much should they be able to spend on a monthly basis or even weekly basis, and then C, are they doing anything that has to do with money laundering? So and then again, it's our responsibility. It's the supplier's responsibility to to give those options to the operator, and also to educate them properly about them, because I've seen so many things fly around in the past few months and years, companies, trying to get into this industry because they see it's a lot more exciting than the financial services. It's a lot more customer facing, and financial services companies just take ages, to even change something, right? So,
Yeah.
and yeah, this whole industry is just kind of a lot more educated anyway. But we need to make sure that the things that we provide are waterproof and then also explained in the right way, because there's nothing more that I hate more than some sales BS that has been just flooded into the market, and confusing like clever people like Martin, an example, where they're kind of questioning where they're even from, so when they hear those things. But yeah, no, I mean, on a serious note, it's just making sure the data sources are there, and really providing something that's waterproof.
I mean, that's what I was going to ask with regards to. I mean, obviously in Brazil, I'd say the industry's got lucky that there is something such as the CPF, which makes life a hell of a lot easier. Um, how does that how does that compare with some of the other LATAM countries where people are operating? And if they don't have this single source of truth, what do you look for? What does a good document look like for you to have confidence into then communicate that to your client?
Again, like I said, I think Brazil is like kind of like almost like an alien, because they have this CPF system, or CPF, directory tax ID, whatever you like to call it. And it's a brilliant way to do it. I mean, I think countries like Peru, they are starting to create something similar, which would also be called CPF, which would obviously massively help. But then again, if you don't have something like CPF, then like I said before, there is different sources where you can get that from. Whether that's an example, credit reference agencies, whether that's an example, electoral roll data, if you can get your hands on that, utility data. There is official government databases which we have plugged in when it comes to an example, stolen documents, etc. So we have that kind of overview, and we can flag those things. And it's really just let's say mobile intelligence, mobile data. Where's the person located? Have they, an example, swapped their SIM in the last 24 hours, etc. So again, if we don't have something like CPF, we then go into other and different things that we can provide to the operators to then again make an educated decision.
And Martin, with regards to Entain, how does this does that tally up with? What I'm saying is, which jurisdictions are perhaps more challenging to get this source of truth? For you, where do you have to, go the extra mile, shall we say?
Well, as Rogers already pointed out, there are jurisdictions that either don't have ID cards or even ID system, or it sits somewhere in a rather obscure corner of, it's usually the equivalent of the Home Office or Ministry of the Interior. We've also experienced in the past that some jurisdictions, owing to the political ping pong, if you will, between the government body that's been allocated or signed the responsibility to regulate gambling, but not necessarily on speaking terms with the body that happened to be the master of the database. So it's issues like that. There may not be a unified system across the country, and ultimately there may not be, as I've already started saying, the will of everybody who needs to get involved to share the data. Having said all this, the good thing, at the very least, about the North American regulators or government bodies is the fact that, just like the industry, they're interested in the upside this industry, general gambling and sports betting, generates for them. So they would be prepared to go the extra mile to make sure that we do get access, because restricted access, restricted to the extent that's necessary for conducting this kind of verification to the data that we would need. But that's where, at least historically, some of these frustrations have stemmed from. At the same time, and without trying to contradict myself to Roger's other point, I personally, because I did law school for a reason, but I'm amazed at the technological progress. It goes well beyond this industry. I can grab this thing, it takes my picture, usually looks horrendous, the picture, but that's just my face. And then you get verified. So some gremlins behind the scenes in the system, they do all the hard work. So long story short, I believe it's a combination of government authorities being willing to provide access to the data that's needed with a view to making any gambling regulation a success for everybody involved, and the technological progress this industry has been through.
Yeah, it seems a long time ago. It's tricky just to get some of this information from banks in the UK, let alone anywhere else. Just to trying to get age checks and things like that. I mean, there's a question on Q&A. I'm not sure how how much detail we got go into it, but how does LATAM compare to um, some of the other jurisdictions as opposed to sort of automatic KYC? Does it perform in around about the same level as North America or Europe? Or, what does it do, performance levels?
Um, I would say probably there's actually vast differences even in Europe. So like I wouldn't even say I wouldn't even class Europe as a whole that has access to great, let's say, databases. So if you look at an example, of course, UK, um, historically always there was always enough data sources in order to automatically, without even looking at a document, to being able to verify between 80 to 90% of the players that walk through the door right away. And then the smaller part is obviously the non, via documents, an example. And when you look, although when you look at an example other countries, whether that's an example, Portugal, Spain, Italy, Romania, which are huge gambling markets, it gets a lot more challenging. So where you have to then switch to an example documents. I mean, from a document perspective, an example for us, what we can see, there is not actually a big difference that we can see, because our systems have always been trained to deal with paper-based IDs. And then, as I said, to have an example, the immediate backup of an example, if the quality isn't great of the picture or whatever, and we always try to do the heavy lifting for the operators. Now, again, like I said, we just drive a dual approach, so we can do it either fully automatically, where you can, in Brazil, probably expect around about 60 to 70% of the documents being verified, which is already quite good, considering 85% of all that traffic is actually paper-based IDs. But also with, let's say, the hybrid approach, where it goes even up to an example 82, 83%, which again, I'm providing very realistic numbers. I'm not selling any Brazilian or American dreams here, in fact. But that's kind of where you have to look at. I mean, I would never compare. It's like comparing apples and pears when you compare South America to Europe, an example, right? Because I mean, as we just heard, the new ID is incoming obviously this year, I believe, towards the end of the year, but it will take some time in order for everyone to get that new ID. It's not something that will happen from today to tomorrow. It will take at least between 6 to 10 years, because of the validity of the old documents. So there's a long road ahead, but and then of course, if there's any more questions, if I should go into any more detail, because I don't want to bore anyone with all the details, please just reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm always happy to to provide the numbers that we see, that we have, and also any best practices that we can share, and also happy to answer any of those questions. And just to then finally, if there's any limitations on in terms of language, I mean, quite luckily, no, because Portuguese and Spanish are very, very common languages with, let's say, character sets that are also quite easy for machine learning to learn, and then also to to verify. So I would say the limitations are compared to, let's say, I would say, the more Latin characters, whether that's an example in English or anywhere else, is actually quite minimal. So that's also on the good side there.
Excellent. Martin, I don't want to have you revealing any secrets that you'll have to wait for the
Oh, here we go. When it starts
annual
like that,
report.
it's going to be good.
I was wondering if that experience that Roger says with sort of rates, does that tally with what Intane see, as to the best of your knowledge?
Yeah, it absolutely does. Because suppose we're coming at it from a very, very similar angle, ultimately, to make the regulating and future regulated market successful. As I've already said, we need to get the customers through the door, and the smoother the journey it is for them, the more likely they will be, at the risk of stating the obvious, to stick around, because they know that once they're verified, it's done. Of course, we keep a very, very close eye on them and all their actions on the side, from anti-money laundering, anti-fraud, responsible gambling perspective. And every now and then we would ask for refresher of the documents, most definitely of documents that might expire in the meantime. So don't get me wrong, it is a continuous process. But the first critical point is account opening. We do need to be working with the likes of Roger to make sure that it all goes through smoothly. And actually, from the customer perspective, if you don't know how to play not only by the book, but also culturally sensitively, if you can't get it culturally right, it may be off-putting for customers. Oh, this looks weird. These guys, look, I happen to be Chilean, Brazilian, this or that. These guys don't really know much about my country. So how about, instead of signing up, because customers are allowed to sign up with multiple operators, but let's say somebody picks Entain Sporting Bet in Brazil, but at the point of registration feels like we're not giving them the proper Brazilian experience from the word go, they might actually run for the woods. They'd run away and open an account with 365, and we've already lost a customer. So on top of the technological and machine learning evolution and developments that we have already addressed, Roger's very pertinently and ably touched upon the language point. But to my mind, as I've just said, it goes beyond that. Now, the onus is on the operator to make sure, being supported by the likes of these guys, to make sure that we provide the smoothest customer experience from the word go, and that extends to the tone of voice, extends to the language, extends to the appropriate cultural references, so that the customer literally feels like home. Okay, those are my guys, because they speak my language, they know what they're doing in my country. They may be a global behemoth, but at the same time they know how to go about things in my case and in my country.
Yeah, because I mean, you can have confidence that the CPF number, which is vital to everything they do, it will be looked after and treated with due reverence, rather than, you know, some offshore entity that you're not entirely sure knows how key those are.
Yeah,
But,
absolutely. That goes without saying. The strictest data protection standards apply to all the data that Entain gather and collect from our customers across the industry, and who's not prepared to do that shouldn't even be around, should not be allowed to be in any regulated market in the first place.
Excellent. Well, I think we're coming to the end of our time. There's no more questions. So I want to thank Roger, Martin, and Felipe, and hopefully he's having a luxurious flight.
Yeah, safe flight. Yeah.
And,
No
but,
bumps and all that.
yeah, no turbulence. And yeah, just want to thank everybody for turning in and joining this this discussion. So thank you very much, and I'll see you at the next one.
Thank you very much. Take
Thank
care,
you.
everybody. Bye-bye.